my soul starts to linger. It's home, I know. If you catch me daydreaming now and forever, thoughts are carrying me alone to that place we call home. Down that long road, throughout life we roam. Wherever I go, to that place I know.
Around the time of Confederation, the naysayers were having a field day. No, there would never be a railway cutting through Canada as a shortcut for the American rail lines. Never. No, there would never be a settlement in the middle of a county that was, for the most part, a bog. Well, guess what? They laid the steel, they drained the swamp, and they used the clay for brick. On top of that, the clay quarries became swimming holes in the summertime and skating rinks in the winter. It's the hub of Essex County, and it's home for a lot of people who work in the nearby city of Windsor. It is also a place that still demonstrates its individuality through a series of interesting undertakings. We'll look at some of those, and we'll check into the history and see if we can figure out what it is that fuels the human spirit and mind to go against the odds. This is the town of Essex in southwestern Ontario. This is how it began, a rail line intersecting a road. And today, a town contemplates events which have shaped it.
I think we've got one of the most colorful and exciting histories in the world, but we're not talking enough about it.
What other town can say it's had 2 fiery explosions, its own fiery rebellion, gone into default and depression, and finally triumphed?
Not your average story, not your average neighbor.
If I wanted to pick up laundry, I'd do a roll. If I wanted to have some, I'd do a loop, and she'd come out to the field, and I'd land in a small field outside of town, and that's where I got my laundry done.
They're everywhere. Crows, that is. One of the largest rookeries is right here on Canada's 42nd parallel. Interaction between surrounding county and the town of Essex permeates day-to-day life. Sometimes called the Florida of Canada, a peninsula taking in the oldest counties of Ontario. An influencing factor in Essex foundation, a road, now Highway 3, reached here in 1818, almost 60 years before the rail line. Evelyn Couch Smith.
The Talbot Trail, that was the beginning of development in this area, ran from Leamington to Windsor on high ground known as the Ridge. Then when the railway came, it went to Amherstburg and came in from what's now the Woodsley area, forming an X and right in the middle of the county, and that's where Essex sprang into existence, because people saw that where those 2 methods of communication and transportation connected would be the development and the place to be.
700 square kilometers in size, low-lying Essex County offered resources of timber. John Milne, a schoolteacher working on a second career, saw promise. The year, 1873.
He said in his memoirs that he wished to clear the swamp and trees away from the tracks so that the sun could shine in and dry the roadbed. He saw the potential and stayed here and, in effect, became the father of the town.
And so out of the mud arose what is called the hub of the county. With a population of 6,700 today, Essex is able to maintain a separate identity despite its proximity to the city of Windsor, 20 minutes away. In recent years, the realization has been that maintaining a distinctiveness means creating awareness of a place's beginnings. And so the push is on. And folks like Brian Romanoli, although he doesn't live here, are playing a part.
Basically, I'm what you would call a Canadian heritage artist, interpreting the past on walls. In the case of Essex, what we were doing is taking the old photographs out of the archives, blowing the dust off of them, and reproducing the old photos on the wall in some creative or interpretive way. The theme of this particular mural is transportation in Essex. And what was very fascinating, and I found kind of a rather novel effect to it, was that the streets of Essex used to be mud. Whenever it rained, it was just mud, mud, mud. And stagecoaches or carriages or hearses even had to be accompanied by a man walking alongside, knocking the mud off the wheels in order for the carriage or vehicle to move.
Two men are said to have been standing on the sidewalk, or whatever they had then, it would be a boardwalk, no doubt, in their hip boots, waiting along the streets. When one of them noticed a silk hat going down the middle of the street, seemed to be just floating along. And he said to his companion, "I'm going over to get that." So he waded out in his boots, and when he lifted it up, he saw there was a man underneath it riding on a horse.
Well, giant murals describing Essex's past are going up everywhere. Take the Naylor Lumber Company, a driving force here into this century. Documenting it in a mural raises certain emotions. Mark Naylor is a descendant.
It's a sense of accomplishment and a sense of pride that I feel when I look at that, to know that these people were very instrumental in helping, giving the town its roots and growing, and we're part of an institution in this town for almost 100 years. It's been, to look back and see some of that history and let people know in general what has gone on in the past is really interesting. It's an important part of life to understand where we came from.
Essex is so different from my hometown in a sense that they have a train running through the middle of town. And I think that's so unusual because 3 or 4 times a day you have to stop your work for this big blast of a horn going through town.
The 1870s. Railways were no longer the hot ticket item for investment on either side of the border. Yet the dream of the Canada Southern Line persisted.
The minute the word came that the railway would be coming through, settlement began. Some people moved houses, stores into the area.
Some men got the idea that if they could build from the Niagara Peninsula through to Chicago, they could provide a bridge line between Western American railways, such as the Union Pacific, and Eastern American railways, such as the New York Central and Hudson River. They set about to build this railway, even though they really didn't have all the resources that were necessary.
Plotting his way through a precarious financing plan, merchant, politician, tireless promoter, Isaac Buchanan would not let up until that day in February of 1873, completion.
If you look on a map of the eastern U.S. and Canada and draw more or less a straight line east from Chicago, you cut off part of southern Ontario when you reach into the New England area. And when the people were designing the Canada Southern, they thought that they could compete fairly effectively with other carriers, for their route would be roughly 40 miles shorter than other railways at that time. To achieve that, they built a fairly straight railway through the peninsula of southwestern Ontario, linking Amherstburg with Niagara Falls.
People came here to go on excursions. Livery stables were built because people came with their horse and carriage or wagon, whatever, and left their horses there while they traveled to other places in the States and Canada.
The railway's involvement with the town became more important sometime later in the 1880s when there was problem with the ice buildup on the Detroit River. The railway ferries were having difficulty crossing the Detroit River at Amherstburg. At the same time, it was decided that since Detroit was becoming more important, as was Windsor, in terms of being a commercial center, they decided that it would be best to serve that area by a railway. And they changed their main line from Essex up to Windsor.
And I think the fact that that sharp curve is there is indicative of how the Canada Southern and later Michigan Central thought that Essex was very important as a shipping center because they could easily have gone straight through from Woodsley, for instance, into Windsor. Well, Essex actually became the hub of the county the minute that the railway began to run across the Talbot Road because it made it the shipping point. It was contact between the States at the Niagara region and at Detroit. And as well, it was a shipping center for people who lived in the area around for their farm produce.
At a parallel with Northern California, corn, wheat, and soya are the principal crops in this most southerly, as well as most agriculturally productive area in the country. The region has also produced some interesting individuals. Jerry Billing. Yep, he's one of them. How did a young fella from this area of Essex get the flying bug?
There were four young guys, Len Bedell and Jimmy Whitson, Robinson, and that. They started to build an aircraft, and it was a home-built aircraft out in a barn just out of town. Henry Ford gave them a motor for it, and I used to sneak down and look through the cracks and watch them. Of course, I didn't want a kid around.
Well, the kid became a World War II fighter ace. Still in a restored Spitfire today, Billing is recipient of the Malta George Cross for helping to bring victory to the Allies. And flying is still a part of him.
It's pretty good. You can go out in your pajamas and slippers here, nobody around, go flying early morning in the summer. It's no problem.
Essex, as one of 21 municipalities in the county, benefits by its role in administration and services. Growing from a handful of people in 1870, it was a place of 3,000 some 20 years later.
The Globe and Mail did a 3-page spread on the town and its merchants and how well it had progressed. But when the lumbering industry came to an end with the depletion of the forests, people turned to the rural areas and went into farming.
Although farming and food processing are viable industries today, Essex, a town with an unlikely beginning, has scars from the past. Scars from being bankrupt in the 1930s due to bad investment in a local street railway. Scars from the town's inner core being flattened by a gas explosion in 1980. Nevertheless, it refused to die and has opted to push ahead with whatever opportunities can be found to keep its history alive.
I treat murals like theater, creating one major visual for the viewer to focus on individually at a time. The major feature in this particular mural is of course, a stagecoach. Secondary features would be the montage images in the background. And that's somewhat of a trademark of mine, where I place the old archival photos in the background and I rework them. And this creates a ghost-like figure quality so that the viewer can go in for further viewing and for further interest, but the major figure is still there for the impact. It's drama, it's theater, it's all those things in one.
Back to the beginning of our story. An unchanging element in the town's life. A monument that signifies Essex's roots, the importance of heritage.
It would seem rather obvious that the railway station was built so luxuriously because they felt that it would be a transportation center.
Like the old buildings in other towns, the station is now regaining stature. Why?
First of all, it's an exceptional building, not just in terms of Essex, but in terms of heritage in Southwest Ontario, or even Ontario as a whole.
The Essex station is very unique. In fact, it is the only such station of its kind on the Canada Southern Railway. It was built with fieldstones.
The building is an essential part of the beginning of Essex as a community and probably as a county.
One of the setbacks that Essex had in its early years occurred on August the 10th, 1907. A railway car was being shunted at the station, preparation to shipping a load of dynamite to Amherstburg.
Some people heard what they thought were gunshots coming from the general area of the Michigan Central Station.
It was nitroglycerin was packed in the car, and investigations later show that it had been improperly packed and some of the cartons were leaking. And all of a sudden, one of the drops ignited.
Before 10 o'clock, there was a very violent explosion which leveled the area, seriously damaged the station. When people went to the station to see what had happened, they found a crater some 20 feet across and 10 to 12 feet deep.
The two men who were working near it were killed. The one's body was in the crater. The other one was blown to pieces.
The sound was heard for miles. It was heard in Detroit. Plaster was knocked from ceilings. Windows were punched out for quite a few miles around. An investigation into the death of the two men showed that the railway had improperly transported the nitroglycerin and that the manufacturer had improperly packaged the nitroglycerin so that with the heat of the summer it had melted through its holdings and somehow fallen out through some holes in the car onto the tracks.
I think we've lost so many of our prominent buildings over the past. The old town hall, the old Rebecca's Hall, the old post office, that we don't have very many things left, and I think there's a real strong presence and a real strong need to keep those things that are left. There is a real history here and a real netting together and of people pulling together. The disasters that we've had, everybody's had to work together and everyone always has, and I think that it's a feeling that has drawn people to the town because there is a sense of community here. It's more than just a bedroom community.
One of the things that are overlooked that I found fascinating was that Essex is home to a couple of transportation firsts. The first tractor in Canada, the first motorcycle in Canada, both by the Hills brothers, quite notorious locally. I think history is colorful, but it's just in the way it's presented. And I think each and every town and village and city wants to see themselves or see their own town history on the wall someplace, or they want to talk it up.
History is interpretation.
Well, in the middle of the Blitz and the battle, it's over Malta, and you know, we were scrambled maybe 10 or 12 to 1 or 2. I was doing quite well. One of the other guys was shot down. I was leading the section, and you hassle with them and you get squirts at them, but to get a kill, you had to have somebody see the aircraft. And you see the movies where people, you know, watch things going, but that doesn't work that way. You shoot like mad and then brake like hell and get out of the thing. So I was shot down this one time. There were 6, and I was alone. I had them all cornered there for a bit, but they finally got me, and I got out, and I got going straight down. I don't know really how I got out. I simply put my hands on the controls and shoved. We never flew with a canopy there at that time.
If you were to go to Essex today, you see a modern community, but if you stand quietly by that Fieldstone station and walk reflectively along that platform, you can just imagine the excitement there was in the air when express trains would be operating over that line, linking major American centers with other American centers via southern Canada.
Most of us felt that the town needed to have that bit of its history preserved, partly because of the effect it had on the town in bringing it into existence, and also from the point of view it was such a beautiful building.
Communities that disregard their past are not great places to visit.
Any town needs its heritage, and Essex had destroyed most of it. I don't think you can really say we have anything else left. So we felt we must hang on to this railway station for the sake of some heritage for our children. You know, there's the old belief that your future depends on your value of your history, your historic past.
I think it's an excellent opportunity for a town to show off its wares, perhaps, bring those dusty old photographs out of the archives and talk it up a bit. And I think history is colorful, but it's just in the way it's presented.
History, different for all of us. We're doing all this glamorous stuff with the Spitfire here. But right behind you at that window is an airplane with some history. That's an Aeronca out there. And when I was a kid, I learned to fly little airplanes on an Aeronca, just like that one. I want to go and have a look at it. Will you show me around?
No problem.
Can we do that?
Yes, very
You
easy.
flying that all the time?
Oh, yeah, pretty well every day as much as we can. There's two of them out here, but that one, the yellow one there, belongs to me.
Flying an Aeronca is history for me. If there is a lesson to be had, at least one that I came away with, and I feel the people of the town of Essex have learned, it is the value of touting our heritage. At whatever scale it may be, it can give society a grounding in this ever-changing world.